The sun rose slowly over the plains of East Africa, casting long golden rays across the savanna. In the distance, acacia trees stood like silent guardians, their shadows stretching far and wide. The small village of Ngolo stirred to life as roosters crowed and smoke from early morning fires drifted lazily into the sky. Among the many voices that filled the morning air, 3 in particular rang out with excitement and laughter. Those voices belonged to Kato, Juma, and Malik, 3 boys bound not just by friendship, but by brotherhood. They had grown up together, racing through the tall grass, swimming in the river, and learning the ways of the land from their elders. Now in their late teens, they shared a new passion, the thrill of hunting. Kato was the eldest at 17, tall and strong, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. His father was a respected hunter, and Kato dreamed of one day matching his father's skill. Juma, 16, was smaller but quicker, always thinking of clever ideas and strategies. Malik, the youngest at 15, had a big heart, full of courage and curiosity, though sometimes his recklessness worried the others. On that morning, the 3 friends had made a pact. They would journey farther than ever before, into the mountains and forests beyond the horizon, where wild game was said to be plentiful. Their goal was simple, to return with a prize that would earn them respect among the men of their village. Today, Kato said, adjusting his spear as they walked, we will prove ourselves. Juma grinned, shouldering his small bow. Not just prove ourselves, we'll bring back something no one has seen in months. Maybe even an antelope. Malik laughed, his eyes shining with excitement. Or maybe a lion. Imagine that. The others shook their heads at his boldness, but deep down, each of them carried the same fire, the hunger for adventure. As they left the village behind, their mothers called after them with warnings. Be careful. Stay together. Do not go too far. But the boys were already beyond the edge of the huts, their hearts pounding with freedom. The journey was long. For hours they walked through open grassland, listening to the rustle of animals hidden in the tall grass. They saw zebras grazing in the distance, giraffes stretching their necks to nibble at the treetops, and once, the shadowy figure of a hyena slinking across their path. The boys whispered and pointed, their voices hushed with excitement. By midday, they reached the edge of the mountain forest. The air grew cooler, filled with the scent of moss and damp earth. The trees rose high above them, their branches weaving together to block much of the sunlight. Birds called overhead, and the sound of insects hummed in the background. It was here, deep within the forest, that they saw it, a wild antelope, sleek and fast, darting through the trees. There! Juma hissed, raising his bow. Kato signaled with his hand, and the boys spread out, moving quietly between the trees. Malik's heart pounded as he gripped his spear tighter. This was their chance, the moment they had dreamed of. The antelope ran ahead, its hooves thundering softly against the forest floor. The boys gave chase, their feet flying over roots and rocks. The animal was fast, but the boys were determined. They pushed deeper and deeper into the woods, until suddenly, the antelope disappeared into the mouth of a dark cave set into the side of the mountain. The 3 boys stopped, panting, staring at the cave entrance. Did you see that? Malik gasped. It went inside. Juma frowned, glancing at the shadows within. Strange place for an antelope to hide. Caves are dangerous. But Kato's eyes were fixed on the darkness. If it went in, we follow. We cannot go back empty-handed. The decision was made. Together, they stepped into the cave. At first, the air was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of earth and stone. Their footsteps echoed against the walls as they moved cautiously forward, their eyes adjusting to the dim light. The cave twisted and turned, narrowing in places and widening in others. For a while, they saw glimpses of the antelope's tracks in the dust, proof that their prey had indeed gone this way. Encouraged, they pressed on. But the deeper they went, the darker it became. The last rays of sunlight from the entrance faded, leaving only the glow of a small torch Cato lit with flint and dry grass. The flame flickered, casting shadows that danced across the stone walls. "This place feels strange," Juma whispered. "As if it hasn't been touched in years." Malik tried to sound brave. "Maybe that means no one will disturb us. The antelope is ours." They walked further, their breaths echoing in the silence. The cave seemed endless, a maze of stone stretching into the heart of the mountain. And then, without warning, the ground trembled. At first it was only a faint vibration, like the rumble of distant thunder. But within seconds, the trembling grew stronger. Pebbles rattled down from the ceiling. The boys froze, fear flashing in their eyes. "What's happening?" Malik cried. Before anyone could answer, a deafening roar filled the cave as a massive rockslide thundered down behind them. With a terrible crash, huge boulders and chunks of stone fell across the cave entrance, sealing it shut. Dust filled the air, choking their lungs, as the boys stumbled backward, shielding their heads. When the noise finally died, silence returned, heavy, suffocating silence. The boys turned, their torchlight revealing the truth: the cave entrance was completely blocked. The way out was gone. Cato's face went pale. "We're trapped." Juma's voice shook. "No food, no water, no one will hear us." Malik gripped his spear tightly, his hands trembling. "We will find another way out. There has to be one." But deep inside, all three of them felt the same crushing fear. They had come hunting for glory, but instead, they had walked straight into a prison of stone. And this was only the beginning of their struggle. The silence after the rockslide was worse than the noise itself. Dust still hung in the air, clinging to their throats and making every breath painful. The boys stood frozen, staring at the wall of stone that now sealed off the cave entrance. Cato was the first to move. He rushed forward, dropping his spear and torch as he clawed at the boulders with his bare hands. "Help me. We can move them." Juma and Malik joined him, pushing, pulling, lifting with all their strength. But the rocks were massive, wedged tightly together, impossible to budge. Their hands scraped and bled against the jagged edges, but the wall of stone did not give way. Finally, Cato staggered back, panting, sweat dripping down his face. "It's no use," he said, his voice hollow. "We'll never move this alone." Juma slumped against the wall, his chest heaving. "Then what do we do?" "Wait. Hope someone finds us." Malik's eyes darted nervously to the shadows beyond the torchlight. "What if no one comes? What if we die in here?" His words hung heavy in the air. None of them wanted to believe it, but the thought crept into their minds like poison. That first night was the hardest. They huddled together near the dying torch, the cold stone floor seeping into their bones. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, and thirst burned their throats. The cave air was damp, but there was no water they could drink. Every sound, the drip of moisture on stone, the scurrying of unseen creatures, echoed in the silence, reminding them they were not alone in the darkness. Juma tried to stay hopeful. "Maybe tomorrow the villagers will come. They'll see the rocks, they'll know we're inside." Cato nodded, though doubt clouded his eyes. "They will come. We just have to survive until then." Malik said nothing. He lay awake long after the others had drifted into restless sleep, staring into the darkness, his heart pounding with fear. Day 2. The second day was worse. Hunger sharpened into pain, their stomachs growling angrily with every hour. Their lips cracked from thirst. They searched the cave desperately for any source of water, but all they found was a few damp stones and trickling droplets too small to quench their thirst. At one point, Malik cupped his hands under a dripping crack in the wall, catching what little water he could. The boys shared it, each taking a single sip, but it barely eased the burning in their throats. To distract themselves from hunger, they explored deeper into the cave, their torchlight flickering against the jagged walls. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. They found animal bones scattered in corners, remnants of creatures that had wandered inside and never escaped. The sight chilled them. "This could be us," Juma whispered, his voice trembling. "No," Kato said firmly, though his voice cracked. "We're not going to end here. We'll find a way out." But even he felt doubt creeping in. Every step deeper into the cave seemed to lead only to more endless tunnels. That night, the boys tried to comfort each other. They spoke of home, of warm fires, the taste of roasted maize, the laughter of their sisters, the songs of the village at night. Talking about these things brought a momentary warmth to their hearts, but also a deep ache of longing. As they drifted to sleep, Malik whispered, "I wish I had listened to Mama. She told me not to go too far." His voice cracked with tears, and Juma put a hand on his shoulder in silence. Day 3. By the third day, despair set in. Their bodies were weak, their voices hoarse from thirst. The torch burned low, its flame struggling to survive, just as they were. Kato tried once again to move the rocks at the entrance, but his strength was gone. He collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving. "It's useless," he muttered. Juma sat with his head in his hands, whispering prayers under his breath. He begged for a miracle, for the spirits of their ancestors to guide them out of the darkness. Malik, too weak to stand, lay curled on the ground. His mind wandered between dreams and reality, flashes of his mother's face, the sound of his father's laughter, the smell of fresh rain on the earth. He felt as if those memories were slipping away, fading like smoke. It was then, in their lowest moment, that Kato noticed something. Far along the wall of the cave, where the shadows stretched deepest, a faint breeze stirred. It was so slight, he almost thought he imagined it, but there it was, the cool whisper of moving air. His eyes widened. "Did you feel that?" Juma lifted his head. "What?" "The air," Kato said, forcing himself to his feet. He staggered toward the wall, running his hands across the stone. "There's a crack here. Do you feel it? Air is coming through." Hope flared like fire in their hearts. If air was coming in, then perhaps there was another way out. Gathering what little strength they had left, the boys set to work. They scraped at the stones with their spears, pried with broken rocks, clawed with bleeding fingers. Every inch they gained gave them more hope. Malik, though weak, dragged himself to help, his determination shining through his exhaustion. "We can do this," he whispered. "We can get out." Hours passed. Sweat mixed with blood, their muscles screamed in pain, but they did not stop. The promise of freedom, the thought of seeing the sun again, drove them on. Finally, a shaft of light pierced through the darkness, a tiny beam of daylight breaking through the crack. The boys cried out with joy, their voices echoing in the cave. "We found it!" Juma shouted. "We're going home." But the gap was still too small to escape. They knew it would take every ounce of strength to widen it enough for them to crawl through. As night fell on the third day, the boys huddled together once more, exhausted but alive with hope. For the first time since the cave sealed shut, they believed they might see their families again. While the three boys struggled in the darkness, far away in the village of Ngolo, fear spread like wildfire. By the evening of the first day, when Kato, Juma, and Malik did not return, their families grew restless. By the second day, when the sun rose and still no sign of them appeared, worry turned into panic. Mothers wept, fathers searched the surrounding fields, and the entire village came together, calling out the boys' names into the wilderness. Groups of men armed with spears and torches ventured into the savanna and forests, scanning every path, every trail, for signs of their sons. Kato's father, a strong man named Baraka, took charge. His voice thundered across the fields. "They are not lost. My son knows the land. We will find them." But beneath his strength, his heart trembled with fear. Malik's mother, Asha, could not stop crying. "My boy is too young, he will not survive without food and water," she sobbed. The other women comforted her, but their own faces were heavy with dread. On the third day, a group of hunters followed faint footprints leading toward the mountains. The tracks were light, half-faded, but enough to show that the boys had traveled this way. The hunters pressed on, climbing higher and deeper into the forested slopes. At last, they reached the mouth of the cave. The ground outside was disturbed, broken branches and scattered prints marking where the boys had entered. But the entrance itself was sealed by a massive fall of rocks and earth. One of the men knelt, pressing his hand against the stones. His face grew grim. "This collapse is fresh. The boys must be inside." Gasps rose from the group. Mothers fell to their knees, wailing in grief, while the men exchanged worried glances. The cave was vast and deep, digging through the rockslide would take days, perhaps weeks. And by then. But Baraka clenched his fists. "They are alive. I can feel it. We must try." The men agreed, setting to work with whatever tools they had, axes, sticks, even their bare hands. But the stones were massive, immovable, and the task seemed hopeless. Still, the villagers refused to give up. They built fires to light the night, and men took shifts hacking away at the blocked entrance, while women prayed aloud, their voices echoing into the mountains. Inside the cave, the boys heard nothing of this. The boys' final struggle. By the fourth morning in the cave, the boys were weak beyond measure. Their bodies trembled with exhaustion, their lips dry and cracked. Yet hope still flickered in their hearts, fueled by the beam of daylight seeping through the crack they had discovered. Cato pressed his shoulder against a loose stone, grunting with effort. "Push with me," he cried, his voice hoarse. Juma wedged a sharp rock into the gap, prying as hard as he could. Malik, crawling on his knees, added what little strength he had, his face pale with fatigue. The stone shifted, just slightly, but enough to let in more light. Dust rained down as the gap widened. The boys cheered weakly, their hope surging. "We're close," Juma whispered. "Just a little more." But their strength was failing. Every push felt heavier, every breath more painful. They paused often, resting against the cold stone, their bodies aching. At one point, Malik collapsed altogether, his hands trembling. "I can't. I can't anymore," he muttered. Cato knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. "Yes, you can. We've come this far, Malik. You don't stop now." Juma leaned close, his eyes fierce despite his weakness. "Think of your mother, Malik. She's waiting for you. Do you want her to cry forever?" Malik closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. Slowly, painfully, he forced himself back up. "All right, let's do this." Together, the three boys pushed once more. They used their spears as levers, their bodies straining against the stubborn stones. Their hands bled, their muscles screamed, but they did not stop. And then, with a grinding crack, the largest stone shifted loose. Light burst into the cave, blinding them after so many days of darkness. A rush of fresh air swept over them, cool and sweet. The boys cried out in joy, their voices hoarse but filled with triumph. "There! The way out!" Cato shouted. The gap was still narrow, but just wide enough for a body to squeeze through. Cato went first, forcing his way between the rocks, scraping his arms and chest raw against the jagged edges. At last, he tumbled out onto the forest floor, gasping for air, his eyes wide with relief as sunlight bathed his face. "Come on," he called back. Juma followed, gritting his teeth as the rocks tore at his clothes and skin. He fell beside Cato, both boys laughing with sheer joy. Finally, Malik crawled forward. For a moment, he got stuck between two stones, panic flaring in his chest. "I can't. I'm trapped." But Cato grabbed his arm from outside, pulling with all his strength. "Don't give up. Push. With one last desperate effort, Malik wriggled free, tumbling onto the ground. He lay there gasping, tears streaming down his face, the sunlight warming his skin. They were free. For a long moment, the boys simply lay in the grass, breathing the sweet air, their bodies trembling with relief. They laughed and cried at once, hugging each other with what little strength they had left. "We did it," Juma whispered. "We're alive." The rescue. It was then that they heard voices, shouts echoing through the forest. The boys sat up, their eyes wide. "Over here!" Kato screamed, his voice breaking. "We're here." Moments later, villagers burst through the trees. Baraka ran at the front, his eyes wide with disbelief. When he saw his son, dirty and bleeding but alive, he let out a cry that shook the forest. He fell to his knees, pulling Kato into his arms. Behind him, Malik's mother rushed forward, sobbing as she hugged her boy, kissing his dirt-streaked face. Juma's parents joined, tears streaming down their cheeks as they embraced their son. The villagers shouted with joy, their cries echoing into the mountains. After days of fear and despair, their prayers had been answered. The boys were alive. That night, the village held a feast. Though the boys were too weak to eat much, they sat among their people, honored as heroes. Elders praised their courage, while children gathered around, listening wide-eyed as the boys spoke of the cave, the darkness, and the struggle to survive. But more than pride, there was a lesson etched into their hearts. The value of life, of friendship, and of never giving up even when hope seems lost. Kato, Juma, and Malik would never forget those 3 days in the Cave of Shadows. And for the rest of their lives, whenever they saw the mountains rising in the distance, they remembered the darkness they had faced, and the light they had fought so hard to reach.